All right, listeners, before we get into this week's podcast, I just want to thank our sponsor, Airship Notebooks. They're sponsoring us for the month of March. And artists know that details matter. Whatever you're creating, the details set great art apart. So when Airship Notebooks set out to create their Alpha Sketch Notebook, they paid attention to every little thing. It's 100% recycled paper, beautifully handles pencil, marker, and even watercolor, or whatever other medium you choose. The Alpha Sketchbook's brilliant lay-flat binding is not only more comfortable and convenient, it lets you spread your creativity across the entire 2-page landscape. It's all that helps artists and designers, people like you, be more creative and more productive. Here's one more thing for our listeners. You can go to airshipnotebooks.com right now, enter coupon code Inebri-art, Inebri-art 30, and you'll get 30% off your entire order. This offer is valid during the entire month of March, so grab it while you can. And thank you again to Airship Notebooks for sponsoring the Inebri-art podcast and all our events. And welcome back again to Inebri-arts. This is Andy of the Inebri-art podcast. I am once again recording from my home due to social distancing issues. But because of that, it allows me to reach out to people we wouldn't normally get to interview. And today I am joined by Chris from Catholic Action. And
hello.
I believe you're based in, is it Scotland?
Yeah, Glasgow, Scotland, yep.
So I think you're our first international guest, which is kind of cool.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. That's cool.
So welcome to the show, man.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
No problem. And so how are things over there under the current situation? Are you guys locked down, or are you still kind of going about your day?
Yeah, totally locked down. It's pretty... It's really, really strange, but it's also... It's strange that I'm kind of used to it now. I'm sort of, I think I've maybe left my flat like 4 times in the last 3 weeks.
I think I'm averaging like once a week. I kind of have to run to the store or go for a drive or something.
Yeah, so I'm just kind of... We were in America playing some shows, and we had to come back early, and I kind of, as soon as we got back, I just kind of done a sort of doomsday prepper style shop, and I've basically been... So I don't know, I had a weird feeling about that. Every 2 or 3 years there's another sort of outbreak of something, and for some reason this one I just kind of had a weird feeling about it. It seemed... Yeah, I mean, you never really think it's going to... you always hear about it on the news and they try and be really alarmist about it, but you never actually think, this is never really... It's very, very unlikely that it's going to personally affect you,
Yeah.
So it's... But I had a strange feeling about this one.
It's been so... one day it was fine, and then the next day, everyone's locked down. My day job laid me off, so it was just like I was...
Sorry to hear that, man.
Hopefully once this is over, we'll be going back. But it was such a... My calendar was completely full to I have nothing to do, and it was a matter of So how many dates were you on tour for in the U.S., and did you get to hit them all, or were some of them canceled?
We only got to play 2 shows.
Oh man!
And then we had to go back. It was it was mad. So we were going over. Initially, we were going to do... There's a festival called New Colossus Festival in New York, and then we're going to do a few shows there, and then obviously we were going to go to Texas and do South by, and
South
then
by
I was
Southwest,
going and then I was going to stay on and do a couple of solo shows, because our US label's based in Dallas, so I was just going to kind of stay on for a bit and be a tourist and play some shows. just kind of hang out and stuff. So we played one gig at this festival in New York, and it was really quiet and kind of, it was weird because as soon as we landed, it was like the first thing I read on my phone when we got off the plane was that Trump had banned all flights from Europe, excluding the UK at that point, so we were kind of all right.
Yeah.
But
was there ever that concern that you were going to get stuck here?
There was, yeah. That's why we had to come back early. There was the whole thing. We really thought, like, and looking at it now, like at the time, it was me that put my foot down. You know, after that first gig, I was like, guys, this is weird. Like, I've been in New York. We've been lucky enough to play in New York quite a few times, and I've never seen the city so quiet. It was weird, and it was, I think, just as we landed was just when everyone in the US kind of cottoned on to how serious it was.
Yeah.
So after that first gig, I was like, yeah, we need to kind of get out of here. And but yeah, like in hindsight, like looking at it now, it's like if I did stay as long as I'd planned to, I would have been stuck, kind of thing. So unfortunately, the day after that first gig, we got a call from a good friend of ours. He's the tour manager for the Dead Kennedys, and we'd supported them on the European tour earlier, last year, and we supported them on their UK tour last year, and they were playing in Philadelphia the day after our New York gig.
Yeah.
And their support had pulled out, and because their support had freaked out and went back to California or something like that. But we were still in the country at this point. We were still going to be there. We had to wait 2 days or whatever before we could fly home. So we jumped on the bill there, rented the car, and drove to Philly, played that show, and then that show kind of paid for our flights home.
Oh, well, that's convenient. Yeah,
it was. So it was a real shame that we had to cut our trip short, but personally we got off really, really lightly.
Yeah.
And financially, personally, so we were kind of counting their blessings in that way. And yeah, but since we've been back, I've just been trying to enjoy it for what it is, just kind of trying to appreciate the time you have at home to, do nothing, or, I've just been writing some new things where I wouldn't, normally have had the time. Unfortunately, my day job is kind of, I'm a producer, or a mix engineer for other people. So I've just been mixing basically since I got back. I had a couple of projects that I was planning to mix for people over the next couple of months, and it's meant that I've had the time to kind of do that now. So I've been kind of lucky in that respect. But yeah, it's been strange. It's been really, really strange.
Yeah, I'm really curious because every musician I talk to is like, "Oh, I'm taking this time to write and work on some stuff." I'm curious if, in 3 months, we're just going to see a boom of new music from everyone.
Yeah, there's going to be. The joke is there's going to be an abundance of lo-fi bedroom pop albums.
Right? Yeah.
So many of them. I'm sure there'll be. I mean, that's the thing, though. It's whenever there is real turmoil, that's when you get, great art. I think. Sure. I think there will be some brilliant art out of this.
But I mean, that's entirely valid because most people use art to kind of deal with, their hardship and most of
the absolutely.
Yeah.
Where are you based?
Oh, I am about 2 blocks from Plymouth Rock, where the Pilgrims landed.
Oh, wow.
So,
that's cool. That's amazing.
So this year was supposed to be a huge 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims landing, and there's all sorts of, celebrations scheduled, and now they've kind of all been either canceled or put on hiatus or pushed back. And so it's been a really interesting year because so much. I mean, they've literally been working on it for almost the past 8 to 10 years.
Wow.
And then it just kind of fizzled. So, but there's nothing you can do about it.
No, it's weird. It's kind of hard to think about the scale of it. It's basically like the world's kind of on pause. It's strange. The scariest thing, I mean, my thing is that I really hope that we almost don't go back to normal, in the sense that we kind of learn from this, or we kind of, use the time to kind of evaluate what's actually important in life. And it feels kind of like, I think the initial reactions of the government in the UK, and to an extent the US as well, it's really obvious that people were kind of, again, just putting the economy before actual human life.
Yeah.
Which is kind of scary when it's laid out so barefaced.
Yeah, and I think people are getting a better perspective on what is actually essential, because you have the grocery store clerk, who historically is probably one of the lowest paying jobs there is.
Yeah.
But, without them, we'd all be starving. And so I think
exactly.
Perspective on, whose job is really important.
Yeah. Yeah, you hope people are going to kind of factor that in whenever it gets... the scariest thing for me is that it just goes back to the way it was before, without any kind of change.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it's just completely unprecedented, so it's really hard to know what on earth is going to happen. And I just hope that there is significant positive change, and that's all you can kind of hope for. So
to kind of change the subject and get a little off of COVID, because I feel like that's all anyone talks about, how would you describe your music to our listeners?
That's quite a hard question. I mean,
classification of music is so difficult now, because I feel like everything is kind of amalgam of a bunch of things. But would you compare yourself to maybe another band, the style?
My thing is, I think at a very, very basic level, we're essentially a sort of guitar indie rock sort of band that, to me, I think we write in a sort of classic 60s, 70s songwriter sense, but it's kind of indie pop sort of guitars. It's got a lot of 1970s art rock, guitar rock kind of influences. It's a weird one. We're quite guitar heavy, but I wouldn't say it's nowhere near. I wouldn't say that it's like classic rock.
Yeah.
Although we can definitely play guitar. It's kind of a weird one. It's but on a very basic level, it's kind of guitar heavy indie rock with a big kind of art rock influence.
I don't know if it's the people that I've been talking to lately, but it seems like a lot of the bands are going with like a 60s, 70s vibe. Do you think that's kind of a movement in music right now, kind of a resurgence of that style, or is it just kind of the random?
It definitely has. It definitely has been in the last sort of maybe 10 years. I think there's been a total thing of people looking back, certainly in a production, certainly like in the sort of sonic aesthetic of things, like people have really taken on board the kind of production aspects of 60s and 70s music. Or like if you want to go, or you could go really far and take the look as well, like like the Lemon Twigs and Wise Blood and stuff like that. It's really like visually it's the 70s as well as the sound. I mean, I wouldn't say that we never really set out to do that sort of thing. It's kind of a lot of the music I listen to is kind of like that. I think people, it's a weird thing. I think people, there's an escapist element to it. I think of the last 10 or so years that kind of group of musicians tend to look back. I think I kind of feel that the automatic response is that music from then is more compelling.
Yeah.
There's more it's more quotation marks, it's more like authentic. Whether or not that's true, I don't know, but I feel that that's kind of the thing. People kind of look back maybe for, I don't know. I mean, it's I'm too young to be nostalgic about the late 1960s or the early 1970s. But there's a sense of comfort people find in that music, or there's a something people find compelling about it. But then also, I kind of wonder that if I was this age when that music was happening, that would I be the type of person that would just listen to like 1940s jazz music?
Yeah.
Say, oh, that was better. You know, who knows?
It's funny because I remember when I was in high school in like the early 90s, there was a big resurgence, kind of, 70s stuff was very popular. There was a lot of it that kind of carried over. It was right at the kind of switch from like hair metal to grunge. Really kind of fed off that 60s, 70s vibe. And I feel like a lot of it is that when we're far enough away from a part of history, we tend to glamorize it. And like we look at
absolutely
the hits from the 70s. We don't go back and listen to all the crap that, was on the
album.
So I think it's like trying to bring kind of the positive hits into a modern light. Would you say that's kind of fair assessment?
I guess that's what people are doing. They're just taking the glamour of it and bringing it up to a thing. I mean, again, it's like we never set out consciously to do that. That's just kind of. I mean, I don't really think about it that much.
Yeah.
I think like you could take it and absolutely run with it, like the Lemon Twigs do, for example. They're really. It treads a very fine line, but it's weird though. I was thinking about there is a total there's a weird, you're talking about like the early 90s, and I think there's a total 20-year cycle. I mean, I when I'm working with like younger bands that are like 18 and stuff now, they're like nostalgic for the late 90s and the early noughties, and I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, man? Like I remember that. I was very conscious of that time period, and I'm like, new metal.
We're going to get a resurgence of Limp Bizkit?
Well, I don't know if that sort of thing. Like, there's certainly the aesthetic of some of it.
Yeah.
No one's went as far as to get like a turntablist in their bands yet, but I'm sure some version of that's going to happen. But it's just like, and the aesthetic of it all, like the kids that are like 19 and 20 now, 18 to 20 are like, it's the total like late 90s, early 90s, like visually, or the kids in like bands that I'm working with and stuff. And it's weird. And it's just a total 20-year, it seems to be a 20-year cycle. Like that seems to be the period that nostalgia kicks in.
Now, as you work your day job producing other music and you have your own music, is that like two sections of your brain that you exercise, or are you able to kind of carry over one from the other, or is there kind of like a sorry, go ahead.
There's definitely an overlap. Sorry, there's definitely an overlap between the two. Especially because I co-produced our first album and I produced solely our second album.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of crossover between the two things. Because I think, there's a lot of like, when I'm producing other people, there's still a lot of like, I still have kind of my songwriter hat on as well, because you kind of help people with arrangements and you help people with, song structure or even sometimes lyrics. As you can flag things like that up as a producer, aside from just the whole like sonic aesthetic of it. There's a big crossover. I think I'd like to, in future, moving on, the next Catholic Action album or whatever, I think I'll probably work with another producer. I'll still co-produce it, but I think definitely having another pair of ears on it, and certainly having another engineer on the record. Like I just don't want to touch microphones or mixing desks anymore when I'm working. I just want to turn up and play my guitar and sing, and then add some overdubs and not think about the technical aspect, because having done it now for 2 albums is good. I think I've maybe got that out of my system to an extent. for this project anyway. Like, I'd like to just kind of turn up and play as a band. I think.
If you're producing an album, do you think it affects the way you play? As you're playing the song, are you like trying to kind of like avoid, those pet peeves that every producer engineer would have?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
affecting your play, and is that what you're looking to kind of shut out?
Yeah, exactly. It does affect the way you're playing. It can affect it if you can keep it under control. Like, it can be totally fine. But if you let it's really, really easy to go down a sort of completely perfectionist path that just kind of sucks the life out of stuff. So there's it's a fine balance of, okay, you need to keep on top of the engineering side of it, and you need to keep on top of the overall picture of it as the producer, but you also need to play it with the feel of the artist, and the artist doesn't really have all that in their head. So I'd like to kind of in future maybe just have someone else deal with that aspect of it.
Yeah. So how does that carry over, like when you're engineering someone else's project? Do you kind of like try to alleviate those thoughts from them, so you're like, I got this, you guys just go out and play
exactly,
kind of handle it?
Yeah, you need to kind of set up a situation where they basically trust you, and they can just think about the song and get, just actually enjoy themselves. If someone's, if the equipment or the process of recording is getting in the way of them getting into the headspace where they're going to do a good take, then you're not doing your job properly. When I'm working with other people, it's like you don't want them to have to think about any of that. They just you just want them to, think about what it is they're actually trying to get across with their song. Because I think that's when like the magic happens, really, is when you kind of get into that headspace where your playing's good enough, you can play your instrument or you can sing appropriate for what you're doing, but you just get into the headspace where you're like having fun with it and you're slightly off the cuff. I think that's when the best stuff happens. But you have someone there that's like got your back to tell you like, that's it, you nailed it, or maybe try that one more time. But if you have someone that you trust, then you can just do that, because you're not having to analyze what you're doing while you're doing it.
Do you have to deal with any divas?
Do you know what? Not really. I've been really lucky with bands that I work with. I mean, you definitely... Do you know what? You deal with a lot more divas when you work with London bands.
Oh, really?
Yeah, than when you work with Glasgow bands or Liverpool bands. I kind of jump between studios in London and Liverpool and Glasgow. I don't like to be stuck in one place, and the UK is small enough that you can do that. Take a train or whatever and stay for a few days and come back. But no, I don't tend to deal with divas. I reckon that I'm probably more of a diva than other people in the studio, but it's just me having to deal with myself. So it's kind of,
or they have to deal with you.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, if you're producing it and engineering it yourself anyway, then it's just
I suppose that's true.
It's fine. But yeah, it's it's a weird one. But no, I've gotten lucky. I've gotten lucky with bands that I work with. People don't tend to be divas, or if people are being like that, it's more like maybe there's something. It's not them just being a dick. It's just kind of maybe there's something underlying that's kind of bothering them about the setup or the situation. And
yeah,
there are ways to kind of get through to them and figure out what it is without having an argument, or telling someone off. There's not really, there are ways around it. I think a big part of being a producer or whatever for other people is getting on with people and figuring out what makes people tick, as opposed to being, I just don't think, I don't know, being confrontational is just not my style at all. I just couldn't work like that. So I've been fortunate enough to basically never really get into a situation where I've had like a big blowout with anyone in the studio, and I've been doing it for like 6 or 7 years now, so I think I'm doing all right.
Yeah. Now I'm not that familiar with Glasgow. Is there like a big music scene there? Or?
Yeah, there is. Yeah, it's funny, Glasgow. I wouldn't rather be anywhere else in the UK. I think obviously there's more opportunities in London.
Yeah.
To make money, and if you wanted to go down that route, to get into one of these really big studios and record, all these up and coming bands or whatever, then yeah, okay, go to London and do that. But it's like outside of London, Glasgow's the only place you want to be for music, and it's so in the UK, and it's quite a unique, and it's for its size. There's just an incredible amount of bands and artists doing sort of wildly different things from each other, but generally the bar is really high. Yeah. And I think because it's like, it's like being a band from Detroit as opposed to being a band from LA or New York. It's like you're kind of far enough away from the industry that you're kind of allowed to, you have the time to like figure yourself out before people get involved. So people end up going down pretty interesting paths, as opposed to like, certain venues in London. It's like you can go there, and if you play like, you could be your 5th or 6th gig, and there's like A&R people there and stuff. And it's,
oh wow.
In some respects, if you've sorted yourself out, then maybe that's a good thing. You can just, get the ball moving really quickly. But places like Glasgow allow bands to really figure themselves out and really create a sort of community for themselves.
Yeah.
So there's just always been a good, really strong DIY community here, and the amount of Glaswegian bands that go on to do something really special, like, all over the world, for the size of the city, is kind of amazing. Again, I think it's maybe, people always say that, all the Seattle bands in the early 90s were so good because it just rained all the time. Well, I think it's maybe there's something similar here, because the weather's so bad, no one has anything else to do but like,
sit inside and play. Yeah, I mean, we have some really strong bands around here, and our weather is sketchy at best. So there may be something behind that. Do you feel that, I mean, obviously the industry's changed with, things like YouTube and the internet and live streaming, and it seems like every band and musician is live streaming now because they can't go out. Do you see that as a positive thing? Do you think it really separates the good from the bad, or do you think it gives more bad music opportunity to kind of get out there, or kind of how do you
I suppose it's a tricky one, because I really strongly dislike social media, and I feel that a lot of bands generate a lot of buzz on social media, but like forget about what actually matters.
Yeah,
like their records and their songs. So it's like, I feel it. And also, I just think personally, I feel that social media makes me feel mentally ill. Like, if I use it enough, I feel myself. It's just really bad for your like anxiety and well-being, I think.
Oh yeah, that absolutely.
But I think it's definitely leveled the playing field, I think. But also, it's just made a lot of noise too. And I think it allows people to focus on, not necessarily live streaming, but I think social media in general, I think it allows people to, I don't know, like, I feel like it just kind of shifts attention from the music.
Yeah.
And it also allows record labels to completely put the onus on the band to promote the record. So really, essentially, what they're doing is they just press records now. They don't really. I mean, there's like, they do like bare bones sort of promotion.
Yeah,
and they just leave it all up to the band.
I've heard that kind of thing about actors too, where you'll not get a gig, or a role because the other person has more Instagram followers or something like that.
Oh, it's the same with bands. Like certain festivals and stuff won't book you, and I think like we definitely do ourselves. I'm 100% aware that we do ourselves a disservice by not engaging with social media as much as other people do, or as much as we could. But I don't really like it. I feel like it kind of equates to panhandling at point. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, it's just, there's something really cheap about it to me, and it just doesn't, it makes me uncomfortable, like having to, do you know what I mean? I don't want to play a gig in my living room. I want to play a gig in a venue and have it be loud and lights and, the power of it. Fair enough, do an acoustic set, but and social media in general, it's like, I'm not an entrepreneur, I'm not a YouTuber, I'm a musician and a songwriter, and the records are what's important to me, and you should listen to the records. Like, I don't want to know what my favourite bands had for dinner. Like, I don't care. I care about the records. Yeah. And I think it just, or I don't really care to see my favourite bands pouting in the mirror 3 or 4 times a day. I want to listen to the records. Like, that's so. And maybe I'm just too old, or I'm from a different generation or whatever. But I find it very difficult to care all that much about it. And then I'm fully aware that we would probably sell more records if we engaged with it, but it's just not for us.
It kind of makes me think of like social media is the current day version of that like sleazy record executive that like you don't want to sign with them, but they can really get you on whatever tour.
Get you somewhere, yeah.
But you're like, signing with him would be the worst. But you got to make that. Do you want to make the deal with that devil or not? And I feel like media is that kind of modern day version of that.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing about Catholic Action now, I think we know what we want. We know what we're doing. It's like we're not setting out to be like big stars, or I'm not setting out to be like, I don't want to be number one at any cost. I'm just setting out to make records that I think are cool, and if people can listen to them and enjoy them and have a good time and get something from them, then great. Do you know what I mean? So to me, this time around on the second album, it's like we know what to avoid, and it's like, first time around, being asked to engage with like things like social media, go on, do a live stream and act like a goofball and whatever. It's like, that's not who I am, and it makes me really uncomfortable. And I'd rather like have a conversation with someone like yourself, or a journalist or whatever, or if people want to come and talk at the merch table or whatever and actually have a conversation, then great. It's like, so we just know what to avoid this time, like like it, and I'm much happier for it. It's just it's just not for me, social media thing, and I know that like I know what we are as a band and what we want, so it's kind of like I'm like comfortable with that now, kind of thing. If that makes sense.
It's funny. This is like the third interview in a row where the merch table has come up, and it seems like that.
Oh, really?
The place to like really connect with the band, because it sounds like after performance or whatever, that's usually where the check in to kind of meet and greet people. Is that a fair assessment?
To an extent. Yeah, absolutely. Like I don't always go on the merch desk. I don't always do it. Sometimes it might just be one of us or a couple of us or whatever. Sometimes we end up all out there if people want to chat or whatever. But especially when we're on tour in places like America or Europe or somewhere that's not the UK, I'm much more inclined to go out and chat to people, because I just like this sort of travel aspect to being in a band, and I like meeting people. I like meeting people from different places and just learning things and figuring out what, Texans think of this or what French people think of that. But no, yeah, the merch table's great. It's a good way to actually just have a conversation with people, and I'd much rather do that than post pictures of myself every 15 minutes, because I feel that it's going to sell more records and
right,
whatever, you know.
So where's your favorite place that you guys have gone on tour?
We were really lucky we basically toured the whole of the US last summer. We were the support band for a band called We Were Promised Jetpacks, a Scottish band, and they do pretty well out there. So we just toured, I think it was like 3 or 4 weeks. We basically drove across the whole country. It was incredible. So we started in like Pittsburgh and then went all the way across to Seattle, you know, playing shows on the way and stuff. And then from Seattle, playing some more shows all the way down the West Coast. Then playing some more shows all the way over east, and then playing some more shows all the way back up. So it was amazing. I got to see like the whole, you know, the whole country basically. I mean, not every state, but I can't remember. We counted somewhere how many we were in, and it was really mad how many we got to see.
Yeah.
Just for the travel aspect alone, I would say that I think we go down slightly better in America. I think American audiences maybe appreciate guitar music more.
Yeah.
I think the UK, and I think it's maybe always been this way. The UK is a bit more like, it's more like about like buzz and fashion and like looking cool.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have this like weird like hype cycle of bands that look really cool and maybe have like 2 songs out, and everyone goes crazy about them for 6 months, and maybe 1 in every 10 of those bands, or maybe 1 in every 20 or 30 of those bands goes on to be like, you know, really good and big and stuff, but people just kind of tend to forget about it. And again, like, my thing is just, it's about the music and it's about the songs and it's about the records, so we're definitely not trying to look cool or whatever as a band. If you look at any of the press photos, you can see that. But going over to places like America, I think people appreciate live music more as well, and certainly maybe music like the music we're playing. So we always really enjoy going over there.
Yeah, and we have some really like music heavy cities all over the country. You know, you got, you know, jazz down south, and you know, you mentioned Seattle, and Boston has a big tradition of music, and New York,
yeah,
LA, and you know, Chicago has a whole different style. My housemate is actually British, and she's convinced that the United States should actually be like 3 different countries. She's like, because they're so different in different places. And I wish more Americans traveled in Europe, because I feel like we take for granted what we have over here, and kind of lose touch on you know, the rest of the world, and we just kind of look at it kind of as that's over there kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, it's a strange one. You could probably fit most of Europe into America.
Oh yeah, easily.
It's really crazy. It's like, we were last year, I think we drove through 6 countries in one day. Like that. We drove from like Prague to England in one day. Like, we drove, like, you know, so how many? I can't remember the exact route, but it was crazy. I mean, I suppose it's like, I mean, you know, it's like driving across loads of states, but then every country you go through, they speak a different language, so it's pretty
in different currency and customs and
yeah. Well, I mean, most of it has the same currency now, but there are a few exceptions. Well, us being one of them, but yeah. But no, I really enjoy traveling in America. It's very I don't know. It's strange. It's kind of, it's weird when you first go over as an adult on your own or whatever, or with your band or whatever. It's a strange place, because certainly for people of my generation, it's like really, really familiar. even though you've never, like, well, first of all, everyone speaks English, and second of all, you've kind of grown up. Like, if I meet people of the same age, that we've kind of shared so much culture growing up.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
There's an instant kind of connection. It was funny, like
cultural references, and people understand.
Exactly. It's funny. I used to play drums in a band when I was like, I think from the age of 18 to maybe 20 or 21, and I was really young. So the rest of the guys in that band were all like in their late 20s and 30s at that point.
Yeah.
And we'd done a tour in America supporting Franz Ferdinand, and it was just like our tour manager was an American girl, maybe kind of close to, maybe like 4 or 5 years older than me, but then the other guys were so much older, and it was really weird, like, to witness the kind of, because they were just that little bit older, they didn't have anywhere near the same amount of like cultural reference points that me and the tour manager had, because we were more of a similar generation, where by that point it was like we're all watching the same TV shows and the same movies and whatnot. So it was funny. It was just kind of weird to see that, how much of a gulf there was culturally between her and the rest of the band as opposed to her and me. It was strange.
Do you think it's just that American culture was more, I don't want to say, I'm going to use the term invasive, I don't know if that's right, or it's just you had more access because of things like the internet?
A bit of both, really. I mean, I guess a bit of both. Yeah, I suppose. You don't really think about it that much. You're just like, I suppose it's just sort of, and I guess because of things like the internet, like just like the English-speaking world is, much more connected. I mean, it's amazing the amount of like Australian bands and bands from New Zealand in the last like 10 or 15 or so years have really made a much bigger impact over here and in the US.
Yeah, it's funny. I just went and saw an Irish stand-up comedian perform. Basically,
oh, really?
Basically in Boston, and he kind of did the, who's here from Ireland, and there's some cheers, and he's like, who's here from the United States, and like the majority of the room cheered, and he's like, why are you here? How do you know who I am? And and it's because of things like the internet that you just get exposed to, new people.
Yeah. What?
Dara O'Brien.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Phenomenal.
I know him, yeah. It's funny.
But, and then there was a lot of, like, he'd stop and be like, do you understand what I just said? You know what a cooker is? And so it's so funny that, like, we have the same language, but in certain ways we speak a different language. But, I loved going. I was surprised at how full the place was. It was basically a sellout crowd.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, he's very, very, very famous in the UK and Ireland.
Yeah, I know he's like on Mock the Week and, on QI all the time, which is how I know of him from watching QI online. So to me, it's refreshing to see, people from my country so exposed to other things. Yeah, and enthusiastic.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. I mean, I guess as a whole, like, every time there's the whole, I can't remember one of the, it's a weird one, like, you end up meeting people that their, like, grandparents or whatever came from this, like, I met a guy and his wife a few years ago at South by, and it turned out that his family were from literally 5 minutes from where I live and stuff like that. It's the whole. Yeah, so it's crazy. And then I remember, I think we were in the middle of nowhere in Montana, which I really, really love, and I'd love to go back. I'm very. I have a very romantic idea of like Montana and. Like if you go a bit further back, like the Midwest and stuff in general, like I really enjoyed driving from. We drove from St. Paul's, Minnesota to Seattle over like It took us like 3 days, but it was incredible. Like I found it incredible. Some of the rest of the band were like, they were ready to fucking kill themselves at the end of it. I just loved it.
Yeah.
So we were staying really in the middle of nowhere, and I ended up getting like free whiskey or something like that, because it turned out that the guy we were in a bar, and the guy that he just had tons of Scotch whiskey, and I asked him, "Oh, do you have this one specifically?" And he was like, yeah. And I was like, man, that is literally from like 2 minutes from where I grew up. So he was like, yeah, have some of this. So it was nice. But so there's always just those. It's funny because it's like you're so far away.
Yeah.
But there's all these weird like connections. So it's always interesting to me. So that to get back to that, to what place we enjoyed playing. I mean, just that tour in general, I kind of have that as my sort of favourite memory of touring, definitely.
And other than getting back to Montana, is there somewhere else on your list that you're like looking forward to go to? I'm assuming you toured elsewhere in the world other than America.
Yeah, I quite enjoy. I always enjoy playing in Germany. I quite like it's quite a nice country. I just like to spend a bit more time there. I'd love to play. We've never played in Japan. Obviously, I think everyone wants to play in Japan. I was producing a band from Liverpool the other month, and they done a tour in Japan, and they were like, it was the most insane tour they've ever been on. Apparently, it was like they were playing to like thousands of people, and people were like queuing up outside and bringing them presents and stuff like that. And then
really,
yeah, mad, yeah, and they're pretty. They're not like big by it. You know, they're an indie band. They do, you know, they do okay in the UK and stuff, but they're not like big by any stretch. They were telling me that after they played like a week of shows there and then came back and played somewhere like Leeds or something like that, and they must have played to like 5 people. They said it was really like, they said it was pretty tough.
Humbling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it was pretty. It was pretty mad. So no, I'd love to play there at some point. I don't know if that would happen or not, but.
Do you see any like interesting differences in the crowds? I was watching. I can't remember what I was watching, but it was someone performing, and I want to say they were in Denmark, maybe. I can't remember off the top of my head, but the one thing that I was like really sticking out was when the crowd applauded. They started off like normal applause, but then would like become in sync and all be clapping like at the same time. So I don't know.
Wow.
It was really weird. So I don't know if that was like a cultural thing or it's just something with the audio recording. It was the weirdest thing. But like, have you noticed any like weird crowd things that you were kind of shocked by? Like the bringing presents seems kind of a strange one.
Weird. Well, they also told me actually that I don't know if this is always the case, but they said that the audiences there don't like clap between songs; they just clap at the end.
Oh, weird.
So there's like complete silence between songs.
Oh, that would be. I feel like that would be really almost disconcerting. Kind of like, are you guys?
Yeah,
you like it?
I thought that would be yeah. I would say that audiences outside of the UK, I feel generally, excluding Glasgow, because Glasgow's kind of its own thing.
Yeah.
Audiences outside of the UK generally seem to appreciate live music more and appreciate musicians more as like the artist. Like the way bands are treated in the rest of Europe is incredible compared to the UK. It's really, really different. And I don't know if it like in just in terms of like how bands are looked after and the way they're paid and stuff like that. You know, from that up to the actual venues themselves and the audience. But equally, like for example, venues in France are like, some venues are like subsidized by the government and stuff like that, because they really, it's kind of amazing because they really believe in the value of the art. So they, the venues are like beautiful, well equipped, for example. But I think, and I don't know if this is true or not, I feel that people kind of take live music slightly for granted in the UK.
Yeah.
Because I feel that there's such an abundance of it. Like, considering how small the UK actually is,
mm-hmm.
considering how many bands there are and how many bands there have been, people kind of take it slightly. But then again, it's, you need to take it on a case-by-case basis, and certainly Glasgow's quite different. Glasgow's almost like, if people in Glasgow like you, then they really, 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 really like you. So it's kind of, it's a weird one. Whereas sometimes other places can be a bit cold and whatnot. But I mean, again, it just depends. But that's my sort of general picture of it, having played in the UK a lot and in Europe a lot and in America a lot. It's kind of, that's sort of my general picture of it.
Yeah, it's a weird, like, we have a very active music scene here in Plymouth.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a ton of bars, and almost all of them have music at least 3 nights a week, and we have performing arts centers and all sorts of things. But the unfortunate part is, if you're in a good cover band, you'll work all the time. If you have original stuff, it's kind of hard to get someone to give you, that spot, because people want to go see a band play songs they know from other bands, opposed to going to see something new.
Yeah. Well, I suppose it's kind of, I get it's kind of the same here. Like, there's a lot of musicians I know that, like, on the side, they'll like play in a wedding band or something, because they'll make way more money from that than, doing their own stuff.
Right.
At the moment, they kind of balance
one original here or there, kind of thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing. Yeah, that sort of thing. Or just play, play in a wedding band.
Yeah.
At the weekend or something, and then during the week or whatever, they'll play their own stuff at different venue or whatever. There are a couple of friends that do that. So it's yeah.
Well, I want to say thank you, Chris, for taking the time to talk to us. And I know you're not a big social media person, but where can our listeners go to find you guys online?
Oh, we do have social media. We do have Instagram, and we do have Facebook, and we do post on it fairly regularly. But it's just not.
You're not going to post your lunch.
It's not the be all and it's not the be all and end all of our existence as a band. I mean, we're a band, and we exist in our records and at our gigs. So and occasionally on.
And you guys have a YouTube channel, right?
I think so. We've got we have music videos and stuff. We wouldn't really do. There's not really anything else going on there other than music videos. But I think Instagram's probably the main thing that we update the most.
So if people just look for Catholic Action, they'll find you guys.
Yeah.
So I just want to say thanks, man. I appreciate you taking the time, and it's a
no
weird
problem
situation for everybody.
Yes.
Normally we don't record online. Normally we do a face-to-face kind of thing. But
okay.
So it's all new for us trying to figure this out. But hopefully if you guys come around, I'll reach out and see if maybe we can actually have a face-to-face.
Face-to-face.
Yeah. Get the whole band.
That would be great.
Yeah.
That would be great.
So we'd love to see you back in the States, man, and stay healthy.
Yep. Thank you. You too.
And have a good one.
Excellent. You too. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the podcast. You can find us on all social medias at Inebri-art, except for Instagram, we're at Inebri-art6. You can email us with your questions, complaints, and whatnot at Inebri-art@yahoo.com. And if you're looking for more podcasts, you can check out the other podcasts on our network, Retro Redoctopus, America's Hometown Horror, and, of course, Bar Talk, Old Colony, and Inebri-art Podcast, the original. So check those out and subscribe and comment so we can reach more people, and thanks for listening.